Hi everyone. So I'm here to share some last minute Valentine's Day cards with you today using various products. We're going to use some products from the Simon Says Stamp Valentine's Day kit. We're going to use some stamps and dies from Pretty Pink Posh's Love Set, and then these adorable little stamps from Gerda Steiner Designs. These are the Valentine's Kitties, Only You, and Buckets of Love stamp set. So let's go ahead and get started with our first set of cards. So I have taped down my card stock to this board here, and I'm using 1/4 of an inch painter's tape. I just got this from Amazon.com. It comes in packs of 3 rolls. It's pretty cheap. It's only about $7. And what I like about this tape is that it allows you to get some really cool designs on your cards. So I've been doing a lot of watercoloring lately and making lots of watercolor swatches. And I had this idea to make a watercolor swatch card and then a watercolor swatch painting. And I was like, you know what? I bet we can do this with copics as well. So this is a copic swatch Valentine's Day card. So we're going to use some peach tones and some red tones for our color swatches here. And I put my lightest color swatch in the little section where our little kitty and bucket stamp is, because I want there to be a lot of contrast between the colored images and the background, so they just kind of pop. And then we're going to put some more little peachy pinks down on the bottom here. I am going to end up putting our Valentine's Day sentiment in this corner, so I want it to be a little light. And then these 2 rectangles on either side, we are going to color those in with our darkest peachy red shade. So I'm going to use RO2, RO5, and then some RO8. And we get a nice bright warm red here. And the design that I'm using, use any design that feels right to you. There's no real method to the madness. You just want everything to be a little bit wonky, a little bit off center. You want to have a nice assortment of rectangles, like long rectangles, flat rectangles, and then a nice big square somewhere for your focal image. So now I'm coloring in the images, and we're going to color in the little hearts first. So I'm using some dark red shades here for our hearts. I want them to stand out against the peachy red background, so I needed to use some darker colors for them. So I'm going to use our YR12 for that little yellow highlight in the center, R24, R29, and then R39 for the rest of the colors that are going to color our little hearts that are in the little bucket of hearts. And then we have our little ball of yarn and heart in the upper right hand corner. And then our little kitty, of course, is holding a great big red heart. For the pads on the kitty's feet, I use some R43 for that. And then we're going to color in the bucket with some toner grays. I love my toner grays for when you're trying to make metal or aluminum. So this little aluminum bucket is going to really look nice and metallic once we're done adding in our toner gray shades here. I'm just leaving the center light and filling in the edges pretty dark. Our kitten is going to be a little brown kitty, and he's going to have some stripes that we'll add at the end. So I'm going to give him a base of E31 and then E30 for the lightest shades in the center, like around the little smile and the nose. And then we're going to go around the edges with some E37, and in those little shadow areas, like the area underneath the heart here. And then the edges of the feet we'll color in with our darkest shade. And then we'll use a couple midtones here. The first one I'm going to use is E55. Realize that wasn't quite dark enough, so then we're going to use some E35 and then blend it in even more with the E55. And I'm just going to keep working my way to the center of the face and the center of the body until I get a nice, pretty clean blend there. I'm keeping the paws pretty light because I want them to stand out against the body. So I have my lightest shading on the paws, and then my darkest shading like on the edges of the body and underneath the heart area. and just a little R30 on the ears. And now for our stripes, we're going to add little triangles on the sides of his face and the top of his head with some E25. And then I'm going to add little flecks on the paws and on the edges of the feet and the tops of the ears as well, just to make it look like he is a little striped kitty all over. And then I'm just going to blend everything together with that E35. And just fixing up the center. And now for the little ball of yarn, we're going to color it in with some blue greens. I thought that there wasn't much color on this card and it just needed a little pop of another color. And I think blue green matches really, really nicely with the red and the peachy and the brown tones that we already have. And then our sentiment says Happy Valentine's Day, and I'm stamping that with black VersaFine ink, and then XOXO. And then we'll add some little designs to these two little dark red boxes. So we'll add some stripes here with a white gel pen, and then some little polka dots to this rectangle. This was probably my the most enjoyable part of the card for me. I don't know why that is, but I just love making little doodles on my cards like this. I might go back and make a card that has doodles in all of the little squares and rectangles. It's just really, really fun, and I think it makes the card pop with that little bit of detail. Just gonna add a little white dots to the hearts just to make them pop a little bit. Little highlights there. And now I'm gonna carefully peel off the painter's tape. So if you just go pretty slow here, you should be able to tear off the tape without ruining the cardstock or pulling it back at all. I just went pretty slow, and I was able to get the tape off without tearing. And if you do tear, I mean, the good news is you're tearing a part of the card that's white anyway, so it's not going to be so noticeable. And then that's it. So here is our little Happy Valentine's Day kitty card. He's just so adorable. I'm going to show you a couple other versions of this card that I made in some other color schemes in a second. So here are other two versions. I made a pink version on the left with the exact same design. I just kind of flipped the pattern to the other side. And then we have a little turquoise version. I used some different images there, all from the Gerda Steiner Valentine's Day stamp sets. And that's it. So here are our three little Valentine's kitties cards that we made with copic markers. And now let's move on to some watercoloring. So for this, I'm going to use this stamp from the Simon Says Stamps limited edition Valentine's Day kit. And we're going to do some watercoloring. So I'm going to stamp the stamp with some antique linen distress ink. This is not the distress oxide ink, just distress ink. And I'm going to stamp it a few times along the page. This is a piece of Arches cold press watercolor paper, and I have my watercolors on the left that I've already kind of mixed together. And now we're going to color in our roses. And when I started out with this card, I had this grand idea that I was going to paint each of the petals with exquisite detail that I don't know why I thought I would have the patience for that. So that's the method that I am using here. So if I were to paint each petal individually and make them look like, a real pretty no line watercolored detailed look, this is how you would go about the coloring. But now in a second, you're going to see where I lose patience, and I just decide to color over the whole thing because I didn't want to wait for it to dry. So here we go. I'm just going to start coloring over the whole thing. And then at this point, I got the idea that I would just color them all in a solid color. And then I would stamp over the hearts with some white embossing powder and then just emboss the design into them. So it was actually a much more enjoyable coloring experience for me once I had that breakthrough and just decided to kind of messily watercolor in the rest of the little heart. So I'm just going to finish up that watercolor now using some pink and red tones, and then we're going to get our Versamark ink out. So I'm just stamping 3 of the hearts with some Versamark ink, and then I'm going to put some white embossing powder on them and then heat set it. And now this look I am pretty happy with. So just having the 3 little hearts in the center have their embossed design on them, and then the other 2 will just be flat. I also took one of these frame dies by Simon Says Stamp, and I cut it out. I cut out our panel, and then I also cut a thin frame with some gold cardstock. I just love that look of a thin gold frame when you have a floral card like this. So I'm just gonna prepare this little section here so I can lay down my gold frame. So here's a little gold frame. Just gonna stick that in, and I was using some art glitter glue. I love the thin nozzles on the art glitter glue. It's also a pretty strong glue. I've had this bottle for months now and it still feels full, so you don't need to use much of it. It'll last a long time. And so here is our card panel, and now we're gonna use a sentiment from the Valentine's Day kit. And these are ready-made sayings, so all you have to do is just cut them out, and then they're good to add to your card. So if you don't want to die cut or stamp your sentiments, you can just use those little sentiment strips. I also had this love die from MFT Stamps. I think it's there free with 60, or it was last month, and this month you can purchase it if you want. And I just die cut that out on some gold cardstock, and then I'm going to kind of offset it on top of some white cardstock, so it just gives a real pretty little highlight there. And then I'm going to add some glue to the back, and then we're going to glue it down to the card base in a second. And I thought the upper right hand corner there was the right place for it. And then here is our sentiment from the Valentine's Day kit. It says, "I hate to break it to you, but you are stuck with me. Try to get used to it." So I just love that juxtaposition of the snarky little sentiment with that real pretty delicate and romantic card. Okay, so let's move on to our next card. So we're going to do some more watercoloring here, and I'm just going to take some rose watercolor and just kind of add it to the center of the card, and then spread the color out a little bit. This is real simple watercoloring here. We're just making a background for our more detailed card that we'll work on in a second. And then once I get a nice color spread, I'm going to just set it aside and let it air dry while we work on the focal image. So this is the Love stamp from Pretty Pink Posh, and I just stamped it on a piece of Arches cold pressed paper. And we're just going to color in all these little images. So I am using either a 0 or a 2 size watercolor brush, and these are squirrel hair brushes. They maintain a really stiff point, which I like. And I'm just adding 1 layer of watercolor here, and it's very concentrated. And I'm just going to color in all the little hearts with red. And then we're going to pick a couple of other colors to fill in the other images. And that's going to be all the coloring that we're going to do here. So we're not going to use a wash along the background or anything like that. We're just going to color in these tiny little individual images. So this is a really fun and relaxing project to do. I think I did this on Sunday, and I just kind of sat with my watercolors and my tiny little brush and just had some fun and colored. So for the little flowers, we're going to color all of those in pink. And then once we finish that, we'll take some turquoise and color in the little cupcake icing with the turquoise, and then a little bit of yellow green for the leaves. And then that's it. So that's all the coloring we're going to do for our Love stamp. And now for the rest of the background of the card, I just stamped 2 more of these little strips of hearts from Pretty Pink Posh, and I'm just going to color in the hearts in red and pink, and I'm just kind of going pretty quickly here. And now that looks good to me, and now we can put the card together. So I die cut out the Love with the dies, And then I cut down this card panel. I'm just going to attach it to some cherry red cardstock. And then I die cut out that pink watercolor panel that we had made originally with a heart die. I thought I was going to use it for the background, but then decided to just turn it into a heart instead. And we're just going to pop up this whole panel on our card base with some foam tape. And then we're going to apply the love right on top of it. So the little L has 2 layers of foam tape. So any of the letters that are hanging off the sides of the heart will have 2 layers. And then this little O and the V will only have 1 layer because they are directly on the heart, which already has 1 layer of foam tape. And that's it. So here is our love card. I just love how all of those colors just match together. It's just such a sweet, romantic little card. And that is all I have for you today, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoyed my last minute Valentine's Day cards. I will see you again in the next video, and I hope everyone has a very happy Valentine's Day.